I think there's some unbelievable trainers and coaches out there that have so much knowledge and IQ, but they just don't have that gel with the fighter.
They don't have the bond and they don't have the trust. Yeah.
Whereas really, like, what you need in a lot of the times is, you know, when you're going to compete, you need to sort of look next to you and have that unquestionable trust and loyalty that they're going to walk through the fire with you.
Yeah, this guy's in it for my best interest. 100%. And that's it, yeah.
Because, like I said, I know a lot of guys that are unbelievable fighters in the gym and, you know, even on the street, but they would never have a cage fight or a boxing fight or a kickboxing fight because you put so much of your ego on the line. You know, I've had fights before where I've lost, and the feeling, honestly, is like, in the dumps. Everyone, like, people cross the street not to say hi to you. They're just like, oh, wow, you know, I thought you knew what you were doing. Obviously not. You know, like, very, very judgmental sport. And then when you win, it's obviously the polar opposite. You know, and so at the highest level, it's even more so. So, you know, when these fighters look to go and compete, they want to look, like you said, next to them and say, like, you know, we're in this together, win, lose or draw. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, look, I'm glad he won for two reasons. One, because we're proud of him, he's our boy, and two, because he needed that higher pay, because he needed most of that money to get out of jail in Mexico. So I told him, I was like, how much of that money do you think that you're going to have to use bribing people to let you out after the party that you're going to have? Because I'm sure Mexico hasn't had that kind of damage since the cartels were around, bro. Because I looked at I saw a story in the beginning and all the mariachis were there and I was like, oh shit, it's about to go down. I know, man. Guys, welcome to another episode of Jibber With Jaber. Don't forget to like, subscribe, press all the buttons and all that stuff. Today, I've got a guest in here, Shaun Sullivan. Sully, get me.
What's happening, man?
Mate, first let's just talk about that fight. Coming back off that win with Tai, I can't imagine how you felt because I was jizzing buckets, mate. When I was watching the fight, I mean, I knew he was gonna win. Yeah. And you can say that's biased because he's a friend or whatever, but something about it was just like I wasn't fearful, even though Derrick is, he has the biggest knockouts record, knockout king. Yeah. But I just knew Tai was gonna pull it out of the bag, and when I saw that, I was just like hyped, dude, so much. Now let's talk about when you saw that shit, because apart from streaking into the cage, which you tried to do. Tried to break through. I saw someone try to stop you. You were like, fuck off, mate. You're not stopping me at all. Let's talk about that, bro. I will talk about the build-up, but I want to talk about that moment. That moment, bro.
Yeah, obviously, if you could bottle that energy, it'd be priceless. You know what I mean? One thing I've always said about fighting is, you're putting everything on the line. Your ego, your reputation, your skill set, everything. So, yeah, like you said before, I was extremely confident in Tai because I knew how hard he'd put in that work and done the preparation. And I've said for a long time, stylistically, I thought he matched up so well, and it was a bit of a passing of the torch from Derrick to Tai. I thought he was, Tai was ready to take that next step in his career to really progress and, make a push towards, those top tier fighters. But obviously in the moment, and especially the way the fight took place, Tai had to show, a little bit more ticker and heart than what I wanted in certain stages. Probably only once. There was one moment where he was getting up off the ground when Derrick, done a bit of a sneaky takedown. That he wore probably about 4 or 5 shots more than what I wanted, and they're big punches from someone like Derrick. 130 kilo man with explosives in his hands. No one wants to be wearing them to the side of the temple and the chin, but in that moment, everything was tense and tight. And then, towards the end of the fight, it definitely was a lot of heart and will, And so when Tai sort of like rallied a little bit and started like, a couple of level changes, landing that big right hand and both threw a hard jab, stumbled a little bit, everything was on the line, you know what I mean? And Tai ended up, like I said, did a bit of a level change, good right hand. And then obviously that elbow from last week landed, and then insane. Obviously it was just I think a few people have saw the video. They showed it it's called Thrills and Agony on the UFC page. They show the highs and the lows. So obviously the guy that wins versus the guy that loses, and their corner. It was just in that moment, like you said, I would have streaked through the cage, and I'm someone that shouldn't be doing that, but it was. No,
you definitely should be, and you will be on his next victory for sure. I mean, that there was a tense moment there, but the thing it was that I caught was just like, even after all those hits, Tai's initial reaction was to come out of that clinch
Yep.
and give a really good straight.
Yeah. No, we
that kind of like that's not supposed to happen when you take 6 punches
100%
from the Black Beast. You know, that's not supposed to happen.
Definitely. And I think that definitely
shocked him, man.
Shocked him a little bit. You know, it took a lot of the wind out of the sails from Derrick. It's funny, we had a laugh about it backstage. Me and Ty were in the little medical room because, you know, we spoke about it so much in those, you know, those four weeks prior that, you know, when you do get hit and that, you are going to probably have to deal with a little bit of adversity. You know, don't just bite down your mouth guard and start brawling. You know, don't be afraid to take that little step back and, you know, compose yourself and reset, and then, you know, start to go back to work with the things we've planned. And then obviously when he did get hit, he threw that out the window. He bit down on his mouth guard and just started throwing with bad intentions. And you know, I think that definitely, you know, rocked Derrick a little bit, that he landed 4 or 5 flush punches to the side of the head, and Tai came back not like just with, you know, some half-hearted punches, but he was coming for Derrick's head. And you know, you saw Derrick straight away go on the back foot, and I think that, you know, definitely changed the tide a little bit.
And that elbow, dude. I mean, I was teaching him that elbow for 3 months before we did it. And I'm glad. And that's what I like about Tai. He takes things in. Do you know what I mean? I was showing him how to just, not just this, but go over. You know, it was kind of like, you know, in Rocky, when he's got that movie where the arm wrestling one, he goes over the top. You know what I mean? He does the thing. You got to go over the top.
I'm glad he listened for it.
Yeah, bro, I was so hyped.
I was buzzing for it.
What was your thoughts after the first round? Your honest thoughts?
Yeah, I was.
After the first round, were you still like, easy?
No, definitely not easy. You know, there's so many, you know, you're just trying to remain composed and cool, calm, collected, because, you know, you've got to remember that you've only got roughly around 15 to 20 seconds to try and get a couple of key messages across to Tai in that moment. You know, he's just had a very frantic 5-minute pace of, you know, trying to, it wasn't like it was a slow, methodical fight. They were getting after each other. So, you know, you've got a 1-minute gap in between the rounds. In that, you've got to sort of get into the cage, you know, get him to compose his breathing, a little bit of water, calm down, and you've probably got 1 or 2 little quick messages to get to him. You know, I was extremely confident if we were able to just even get through that first 1 minute of the fight. You know, I knew that Tai would be able to start to dictate the terms, and he would be able to ask Derrick a few questions that we didn't think he'd have the answers for. So going into that second round, it was more or less just, if I could just scale Tai back 1 or 2 steps, I really wanted him to, you know, get back to trying to target that front leg, you know, get that front hand working, because I thought that if Tai could sort of get either all the way in or all the way out, he would present Derrick an opportunity where he, you know, could look for a way out of that fight. And I think and then he did really well to defend that second takedown in the second round, and, you know, then they got into the trenches a little bit quicker than what I wanted, and Tai definitely found a way to give him a way out of the fight.
And I was quite surprised that Derrick went the grappling route, the jiu-jitsu route. And even on our episode, Tai was like, shit, I got to start learning jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. And he handled it magnificently. Yeah. I think, which was so impressive, dude.
Yeah. And we spoke about this in, we're lucky enough, we did a little bit of recording of the build up to the fight and the preparation. And we spoke about this, and everyone joked about, you know, Tai doing the jiu-jitsu and the wrestling sessions. And they were like, I don't think you'll be needing that for this fight. But, you know, and one thing we said, it was actually Conor McGregor that said it a couple of years ago, that, you know, when people, he said it about himself, but he goes, when people fight me, a lot of them turn into panicked wrestlers. You know, and what he means by that is obviously when they feel my power, you know, regardless of what their game plan was, they're definitely going to look to take the fight to the ground. And I believe this is 100% the case with Tai as well. I think, you know, we knew that if he started landing, you know, some of his vicious kicks and punches, that there's a good chance that people are going to look to close the distance, and if possible, you know, try and get the fight down to the ground. And Derrick in the past has finished some guys by getting a takedown, and when they're looking to stand up, land some of those big right hands. So we knew that, you know, and his last fight, he landed a really good exact same takedown that he hit on Tai, you know, inside leg trip on Chris Dokas. And so he did the same thing with Tai, you know, and we drilled, you know, the defense. The first time he caught Tai off guard, and he wasn't able to sort of get his head position and change his levels in time. But in the second round, he tried the exact same trip, and Tai made the adjustment and defended it. And it was almost like that was like one of the last rolls of the dice that Derrick went for.
And how did you feel when you saw him actually implementing what you were teaching him?
Yeah, I was obviously, we're extremely proud. You know, I just think people, because of Tai's personality and his nature, you know, he does. You know, he almost comes across like he's the sort of guy that just rocks up to the cage and you know.
Well, he was.
Really,
he was.
I think in the beginning of his career, I've said before. You know, he got a little upset the other day because in the Embedded series, I said Tai was a guy that, you know, pretty much trained to lose weight, and then the fighting was just his reward. He'd get in there and scrap and fight. And a few people asked him, "Oh, were you like bullied and you did MMA to lose weight?" You know, and obviously he got a bit annoyed about that.
It's the wrong question to ask Tai.
That's not what I meant by that at all. Yeah. What I meant is like people, I think heavyweight, they think he's just open slather, but it's not. You've got to weigh under 120 kilos. And Tai, for most of his career, until he started fighting for AFC in Australia, he would walk around at roughly around 140 to 150 kilos all year round, you know, depending on his weekend, maybe a little bit higher. So he would, when we, you know, made the decision to try and get to those pro fights under the 120 kilo mark, those 8 weeks of training, 10 weeks of training would be to try and get down to that 120 kilo limit. And then once we'd weighed in and he'd made that 120 cut off and he was allowed to fight, it was like, job's done. Now the easy part, now I get to, you know, punch on.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and that worked for a long time. You know, he went on an unbelievable run, and then, like Tai said, then when he started competing against these guys, these veterans of the sport that have fought all around the world at the highest level, he realised that, you know, I've got to, you know, step my game up a little bit and look to try and, you know, embrace the training aspect of competing at the highest level.
Yeah, I mean, he was dangerous before he had the other, you know, bullets in his arsenal.
Yeah.
Now he has those.
Yeah. And he has... Yeah, I've always said before, you know, Tai, people ask me, like, what is it that makes him, you know, so good? And for me, it's a combination that, one, he obviously is genetically gifted and talented beyond belief, you know, like I've always said that Tai's half Aboriginal and he's half Samoan, so I believe he's got, like, some of the skill sets within, you know, both genes. I think he's got the Samoan power, obviously, but he's also got the Aboriginal, you know, a bit speed, agility, you know, those sort of traits. So he's always been naturally talented, but it's also like his mindset. You know, people, we had our friend Carl had come in the corner for the first time for this fight, and he's an old school, you know, K1 fighter, fought all around the world. He was, you know, a bit like myself. You know, before a fight, you're nervous, you're listening to music, you're in the zone, you're trying to switch on. Whereas Tai's there singing, you know, Celine Dion.
Yeah,
you know,
getting ready to come out with Barbie Girl.
Yeah, he's
get on with
and
it.
he's everyone. People think like, oh, it's a bit of a show, but like, if you see any of the videos backstage before he's about to walk out, you know, it's love song dedications.
Mate, I can tell you that it's not, because when we're in the gym, now I don't know if the rest of the team likes this or not.
Yeah.
But the music he chooses to put on is old. You're talking about Casey and JoJo and all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's deep.
And people are doing jiu-jitsu and
100%.
rolling and striking and all that stuff. And it's like, I think they started to like it after a while.
You buy in.
Yeah, you buy in and you like it.
We had a couple of the guys in our last fight in Houston. There was 2 guys in the change rooms, and first of all, Tai said to him, you know, because there's 3 of the guys warming up, and then Tai said, "Is it okay if I put my music on now?" And they're like, "Yeah, of course, brother, of course." And they're getting ready to fight, and then on comes, like you said, you know, a bit of like, you know, Celine Dion, and then the guys like, "Brother, can you please turn it down a little bit? Like, I'm fighting in 15 minutes, and
I need some aggression.
I'm trying to get in the zone." And he's like, "Okay, yeah, I'll let you have your moment," and we had to turn it down a little bit.
Man, it's crazy. How important is it, do you feel, to a fighter to trust their trainer and to have a relationship for the trainer? Because, like, you know, we'll go back to the Samoan G's, and that you've known Bam Bam a long time, since he was a 200-pound, 6'2" baby.
Yeah.
And, you know, the phrase taking candy from a baby definitely didn't come from that baby, because no one taking candy from that baby. Let's talk about a bit of that, about how far back the relationship goes. I mean, people know about it, but I don't think they know in depth of the story behind that.
Yeah, well, the 2 parts to the question. Like, firstly, I've known Tai since he was roughly around 10, 11 years old. So
same size as he is now.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and he definitely he was the exact same personality back then. So I was friends with his older brother. Played football with a couple of them. Met him through one of my close friends, Rocky, and then just started to get to know the family. And so I was friends with the older brothers. Ty's one of 13, 14 siblings, as he told you. So so we used to go around the house. We used to, you know, share meals, play cards. And Tai was like the little brother that was, you know, honestly, he probably had the same mouth as he does now back then. But Tai used to play rugby league, and we'd go down and watch, and he'd be like the other kids, he'd be like trying to beg them for someone to smash me. Yeah. So before the kickoff, he'd be like, please, someone smash me, Yeah. And so, and then what happened is Tai was actually fight training. He was sort of getting taught by his dad. His dad's pretty well known as well. He works the front doors of some of the clubs back in Australia. So he started doing a little bit of the fight training, and I actually started getting into the fight training just for a little bit of fitness one off season for rugby league. I was playing rugby league, and I was looking one off season to jump in, do a bit of training, and then obviously just really got hooked. I got taught some really humble pie in a couple of my first early experiences of MMA, because they say the average male thinks they can fight 16 times greater than what they actually can. And I was definitely one of these people. I jumped in and really got taught a lesson, and it just made me eager and hungry to learn. And Tai at that stage was probably about 16, 17 years old, and he had his first MMA fight. And as usual, he knocked the guy out in about 40 seconds. And and then he was sort of half in the rugby league, playing for the Sydney Roosters, and he was half, still doing a bit of fight training on the side. And eventually he made the transition to, I'm going to give this a bit of a go properly, and he jumped into fight training full time. And we sort of we were just training partners at that time. And it wasn't until I think Tai had one fight where I'd actually taken over the gym. He had one fight where I was his head coach, and that was at about 140 kilo mark against a guy named Gal Pahato. And again, knocked him out in a minute. This was when Tai was just having boxing fights. He was just making money. He was just sort of cruising. He was half in, half out. He was probably up to 160, cut down to 150 for his fight. And then Tai found out that he was having his son, Carter. So he found out, that he was having a baby. And then that's when we had a bit of a chat. And he's like, I want to. It was actually
time to make some money.
Yeah, pretty much. It was time to make some money. And he saw a guy that was the current champion. And he's like, these guys are champions. I'd beat it all. I beat them all. Yeah. I said, you could, but you've got to weigh in at 120 for that. And he said, I'll do that. And he'd said that probably 5 or 6 times before. And he was in a different mindset. It was a different headspace, because he was having
a child can change everything, everything.
And so he did the hard work, and over 10 weeks he went down from 143 kilos, got down, weighed in at 120, and that was for the AFC heavyweight title, and he won the fight by a similar elbow to the one he did against Derrick Lewis in about 20 seconds. So, and then that's when he was on a bit of a track then to make the UFC. And so the good thing is, me and Tai have had this bond for a long time. It was we've actually spoke about it. He's like a little brother to me. We had a bit of a break and some space for a little while there, because I was still of the mindset that he was my 15, 16-year-old little brother. So I was telling him what to do rather than sort of trying to give him options. I was like, no, you do this because I said. And then he became a grown man and had his child, and it was like that this isn't working, especially someone like him. So he had a couple of years break, and then now it's so much more better, because we sort of understand how each other work. And now it's like, he's still my little brother, but ultimately Tai's going to do whatever the hell he wants. So I'm going to try and guide him and tell him, hey bro, probably don't drink 2 weeks before your fight, or probably don't eat that whole pizza.
Good luck.
So I'll guide him and I'll tell him this is why I probably wouldn't do it, but ultimately if he wants to do it and he's going to, then that's on him. And I think I'm extremely lucky to have that relationship with him, because as you said before, how important is it for a trainer or a coach to have that with a fighter? For me, it's number one, because, I think there's some unbelievable trainers and coaches out there that have so much knowledge and IQ, but they just don't have that gel with the fighter.
They don't have the bond, and they don't have the trust.
Whereas really, what you need in a lot of the times is, when you're going to compete, you need to sort of look next to you and have that unquestionable trust and loyalty that they're going to walk through the fire with you.
Yeah, this guy's in it for my best interest. 100%. And that's it,
Because, like I said, I know a lot of guys that are unbelievable fighters in the gym and, even on the street, but they would never have a cage fight or a boxing fight or a kickboxing fight, because you put so much of your ego on the line. I've had fights before where I've lost, and the feeling honestly is you're in the dumps. Everyone, like, people cross the street not to say hi to you. They're just like, oh, I thought you knew what you were doing. Obviously not. Like, very, very judgmental sport. And then when you win, it's obviously the polar opposite. And so at the highest level, it's even more so. So, when these fighters look to go and compete, they want to look, like you said, next to them and say, like, we're in this together, win, lose or draw. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, look, I'm glad he won for two reasons. One, because we're proud of him, he's our boy. And two, because he needed that higher pay because he needed most of that money to get out of jail in Mexico. So I told him, I was like, how much of that money do you think that you're going to have to use bribing people to let you out after the party that you're going to have? Because I'm sure Mexico hasn't had that kind of damage since the cartels were around, bro. Because I looked at I saw a story in the beginning and all the mariachis were there and I was like, oh shit, it's about to go down.
I know, man. I obviously, I was lucky because he had planned beforehand. He was trying to rally the troops, and before the fight, he's saying, listen, we're going to go to Mexico for 4 nights. Are you interested in that? And I was like, it's not really my thing, I'm a bit older. I'm like, nah, you go do your thing, go party. And then when obviously, in the euphoria of the victory and the win, I'm like, I'm down for whatever. Let's do anything. And I was very lucky the fact that he didn't leave until one more day further. So by then, it was like reality had checked in. I was like, no, I'm ready to go home. You go do your thing. And then, watching the videos and the photos, I definitely made the right choice.
Yeah, you definitely did, mate.
Yeah, I would have been sucking my thumb in the corner crying, wishing to go home, and Ty's just getting warmed up.
Yeah, I mean, Ty can party, dude.
Partay, yeah.
Not only is he the life of the party, he can party.
Yeah.
For days on end.
Yeah.
Like it's nothing. And I think that's one of the other things. Ty's young.
Yeah.
And I don't think people realize how young he is because he's so big and because he's accomplished so much. But he's still got so much time ahead of him.
Yeah, people. We said it when they were filming the countdown episode with the UFC. They said, why do you think this? Why do you think Ty's going to win this fight? And I just said, this is now. We're just getting to his peak now.
And if he's learning this much and sponging it in now, in this time.
28 years old, you don't hit your peak as a heavyweight between the ages of 30, 32, maybe even a little bit later. Yeah. Ty's 28, and I saw a bit of a rundown of the ages of the top 15 heavyweights, and Ty's the second youngest in the top 15. Wow. And he's the third in the world.
Third now, man.
Yeah, exactly. So
how does that feel for you? The sense of accomplishment of because obviously part of you's got to go, the praises and everything need to go to him because he's the one sticking 100%. His head out. But you need to, I know you're humble and stuff, but you need to also accept the amount of effort and stuff that you put in there because you have. And, I would see you guys in the gym all the time and you're not doing it. Whenever I see you guys together, it never seems like you're turning up. I think something's exploding outside. It's probably Bam Bam and he's back and he's having a party.
He's heard I'm talking about him.
You never seem like a coach who's coming in to do a job. And not just with him, with everyone who was in the class. You're more of a kind of big brother figure and you can really see that in what you do.
No, I appreciate that.
You really can, man.
It's like I said, people say about cage fighting or even combat sports, boxing, kickboxing, it's a very lonely sport when you go in there and the cage doors closes, you're by yourself. And that's true. That's why I believe it's got to be so much of a team approach in all the preparation and the build up for it. And I think fighters, especially as they get closer towards competition, their senses really increase. It's unbelievable. Even if it's a local fight show, you see the guys warming up backstage. You can see the guys. You can whisper their name 10 meters away, and they'll hear it. It's almost like a bit of a physiological thing that starts all their senses start to increase. But I think I think this happens, from 6 weeks. As soon as you sign on and you're having that fight, I think. There's a shift, there's a change.
You go into the avatar state.
Pretty much, yeah. And I think that fighters are so good at getting a bit of a read, and so if I was sort of half-assed or didn't really want to be there or didn't really care about, how the fighter was going to perform or, their well-being, because they're not playing chess, you're going in there, it's an unarmed combat competition, man. Yeah. If I was sort of half in, half out, they'd be able to pick that up, and, obviously, like I said, I am proud of all the guys that have contributed to Ty's success. I think Ty would be first to say he's got some good people around him that are really doing everything they can for him to achieve his full potential. And, there's nothing better when you put a plan in place, and we put a plan in place 18 months ago, and then we put another one in 12, then 6 and 3, and then we even put another one in now. To see it come together and the boxes getting ticked, it's an extremely rewarding thing.
Yeah, we're all incredibly proud of all of you guys, and I guess it's the whole iceberg theory, right? You see the top, but you don't see the size of the iceberg underwater.
Yeah.
So all of the other stuff, the other factors that have to come in place, and you see that a lot in boxing and a lot of sports where the people will change trainers thinking it's going to be a good thing or whatever, and it backfires big time. So you really do have to make sure that your team is solid.
Yeah,
it's just as important as getting the training in, because the advice as well, and being able to trust someone telling you something. I mean, it's hard enough to listen to someone when you're not getting punched in the face.
Big time, yeah.
But it's another thing to be able to be like, okay, I need to know what he's saying, and I need to trust that he's seeing something that I'm not.
Yeah, because people forget that, again, I'll stop talking about Tai now because you'll get a
exactly.
But like any of the guys that are competing, whether you're on the regional circuit or some of the other guys that have fought in the UFC or Bellator, you don't get in this sport just to give it a go. Once you get to a certain level, these guys that are competing in the UFC truly believe that they can beat any man on their day, or woman in the world. Yeah. So you've got to have that that sense of confidence and cockiness that I'm the best. So to be able to find that balance, to be like, I know it all, I know what I'm doing, I can do this, and then I've got this guy over here that's going to tell me like, stop throwing a left kick, start throwing a right hand, to be able to, like you said, have that trust to be like, ignore every other voice out there, every little bit of advice. Like, Tai fought Derrick. If I had $1, say, for every person that messaged me and said like, just watch out for his right hand, he's got big power in his hands, I was like,
yeah, well, I know that. Do you know what I mean?
Shit, I've got something. Yeah, you know what I mean. So, and that's me. Like compared to Tai, he gets hammered on a daily basis. Like, oh, you ready? You should do this. You should do that. So,
but also to be able to drop the ego and let you tell someone and let someone else tell them what to do. Yeah, that's also a part of it, because I've seen many fights where the coach is talking to them. They're sitting in the corner and they're not even listening. Yeah, because they're like, I'm the one in here doing it. So you have to have a happy balance between
100%.
Yeah, it's me doing it, but I need to respect what's going on. Let's talk about that fucking shoey, bro. Because we need to talk about. But first off, shout out to Tai for the Shaun Sullivan, the new
doing really well.
shoey that's coming out, which I didn't realize that it's not only for alcohol. When I saw some videos.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of people doing the PG and G-rated version. But yeah, make sure shoeyvasa.com, go check it out. Yeah,
go check it out.
If there's any available, they're selling like hotcakes.
Sold out, man.
Yeah, he did really well.
It's like his own NFT going on.
I know. I actually need to speak to him about a bit of a loan or something. So
yeah, right.
Making too much money these days.
Hook us up, bro. Yeah. Let's talk about the original shoey.
Yes.
What are you guys doing, man?
Don't say guys. Don't say guys like this is an all-in thing.
That was a message to Australia in general.
You know what? This is where me and Tai had different views on it. Like, the people ask him, Tai, like, where does it come from? And he's saying, it's a bit of an Australian thing. It's something we do. I myself personally, I've never done one. Yeah. And the guys, like my friends in my circle, I haven't seen too many shoeys done in my life. Tai probably hangs around a bit more of a rowdier crew and a bit more of a party scene and that. So it's apparently a bit more common with him and his boys. But yeah, I think it's definitely something he's owned at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. Because a lot of people didn't know about the shoey at all.
100%.
And like that's been around from cricket games to rugby to all kinds of stuff.
Bit of a Mad Monday sort of thing.
I'm sure these guys are the first couple of guys that started spitting in it and throwing any bodily fluid that they could put in there.
See, my gag reflex, man, is too weak.
It's just like
he did one in I think when the Panthers won the grand final, he's like, I want to do one to celebrate and that, and we're in this hotel room and he got like 3 of our friends to spit in it, and I was just recording it, and you can just hear me dry reaching the whole time. Yeah. Like I had like tears in my eyes just like even watching it.
I can't do that shit.
Not for me, yeah.
And when he was here, he was like, spit. That's the least of your problems from what we've done.
I'm getting like goosebumps now thinking about it.
But he's owned it, and again, it just goes down to the whole. He's so marketable, and I don't even think he was doing it to be a thing. Like I don't think he was like, this is going to be my thing.
No, definitely
I think
not.
they just realized how much the crowd went wild. Just with that, and they expect it now. I think if Bam didn't do a shoey after a fight,
it'd be like
people will be upset
big time. Yeah. Well, that was the only disappointing thing about the last fight. That I don't know what happened, but I think someone threw a beer, but it was maybe an outside beer that wasn't, you know, it wasn't linked with the UFC or something like that. So they didn't actually show it on the telecast. You know what I mean? So the commentators, John Anik was like really pumping it up, and I'm like, I think you know what's coming next. He's about to blow the roof off, and then he must have got in his ear, like, you know, cut it away. So they just kept the camera on Derrick, and they didn't actually show it. But the crowd loves it because Derrick obviously was from Houston. It was his hometown. You know, when he walked out, and we did the first walkout, and we were in the cage. When Derrick came out, we were like, wow, like, you know, they gave him a massive
feel for
buzz
him as well, because it was his second loss in Houston as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
But not to take anything away from Derrick as well, man. I think he's still got a big future in the UFC. You know,
man, he's a dangerous guy to fight no matter who you are.
Yeah.
You know, like anyone that fights Derrick Lewis, you know, like he's not going to go out there and grind out a decision or try and take you down and get a sub. Like, if you lose to Derrick Lewis, you know, there's a good chance you're waking up, you know, with the doctor
on
asking
Wednesday,
you what happened.
Yeah, and you fought on a Sunday.
Yeah, well, that Curtis Blade said that. They asked him, who's the hardest guy you've ever been hit by? And he said, you know, definitely Derrick Lewis. He fought Francis Ngannou, and he said, I sort of got knocked by him, but I woke up and sort of like was trying to figure out what's happening. Yeah. He goes, when I got knocked out by Derrick Lewis, I woke up and I was in the ambulance. The doctor was trying to tell me what the plans are over the next couple of hours. So, yeah, he definitely hits like a truck.
Wow, dude. All right, so let's talk about what's next for Bam.
Yeah, so he's we had a couple of chats with his management team. You know, the guys from No Limits. You know, they look after Tai as far as, like, you know, they bounce a couple of ideas off me. The good thing is Tai doesn't care at all.
Yeah, he's not fussed.
Like, you know, he just, like he said in the past, so he sort of leaves it to us. So, you know, I collaborate with you know, Trent and Maddie and the boys, and we bounce a couple of ideas and put a few things in place. And it's looking really good at the moment. Like, he's ranked 3 in the world, and we want to try and get ourselves
ranked 1 in the world.
Yeah, we want to put ourselves in the position to fight for that belt. You know, and you know, people, you know, Francis has got this bit of aura about him, and, you know, he's a bit of a boogeyman of the division. But I think people forget that, you know, Derrick Lewis fought Francis, you know, 18 months ago, and, you know, he actually won. So. If we can, we're trying to look at a few options now. I think Tai wants to get back in there roughly, you know, towards the end of June, start of July. That'd be a really good time frame, because he's obviously back home in Australia now, spending a bit of time with his son, and also probably, you know, catching up on a few parties. So that'll work us for a good time frame. But yeah, and then if he could get himself in there with, you know, he's ranked 3. You know, Tai's definitely not looking down. You know, if we could get the fight against 2 is Stipe, number 1 contender is Cyril Gane. So either of those 2 guys. Is he
still the number 1 contender, even though he lost?
Yeah, I think he's still ranked the number 1 contender. So he's 1, Stipe's 2, Tai's 3. So I think if we could get the fight with either Stipe or Cyril Gane, and then whoever wins that gets the next shot. That'll be the best case scenario for us.
What if Ngannou doesn't fight? Do you think there could be an interim going on?
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. People have spoke about it. You've obviously, he's trying to work out. He's just had a knee reconstruction, so he's not fighting for roughly 9 or 10 months. So it'll be a little bit of time until he's back in. I think he's targeting to come back around November, December. So he's got his own personal things to work out at the UFC. I know he's interested in fighting Tyson Fury. You got John Jones floating around, you know, saying he wants to fight, but he's not really doing anything.
I mean, look, what's going on with John Jones? I mean, look, again, I can't say anything about anyone, but you got to fight, dude. If you're sitting there just commentating on everything, you need to get back in and kind of do something.
Definitely, yeah. It's probably starting to wear a little bit thin now. Yeah. Like, I've always said, like, people ask me, you know, who's my GOAT, greatest of all time, and if you take everything out of the pit, personal, PEDs, all that sort of stuff, for me, it's John Jones. You know, just sort of what he's done and how he's done it. But now it's like, even at me, you know, being one of his biggest advocates, I'm even now just like, you know, it's getting a bit stale now. You're putting the odd tweet out saying I'd smash this guy, I'd beat this guy. It's like,
so come and smash them.
Do something, you know what I mean? And, you know, I'm interested, you know, like as a fan, to see how he'd do as heavyweight, you know, and he's done obviously extremely well as a 205er. So go in there and test your skill set against some of these bigger guys.
Yeah, and I think Jones is lucky because he has that kind of McGregor thing where he can come back after this long and get a title fight straight away. Yeah. There's only a few guys that can do that. Yeah. And I think he's one of them that can come in and do it.
I think, just through his number of defenses as a light heavyweight champion. I think if he was to come back and the champ was ready, I think they'd probably put him straight in there for a title fight.
Do you think this was Tai's hardest fight?
Yeah, I think it, probably was. Obviously, earlier on in his career, he fought Junior Dos Santos, who was, an ex-UFC champion. That was an extremely good test. For myself personally, I looked at this as a bit of a second chance, because I felt Tai, he won his first 3 fights in the UFC, and then they tested him. They gave him the main event spot back home in Australia against Junior. He did really well, and then he came up short and obviously didn't get the win in that fight. But I watched that fight and see Tai now as a fighter compared to the fighter he was then, and just think
it's a completely different beast. It's a different
now,
animal, man.
So now it was like a second chance to say, like, people, even before this fight, people had said, like, let's see, this is one of those things. Like now it's like, he's knocked out, 4 guys in a row. Let's see, is he ready to take that next step against these top echelon of fighters? And
he's ready, mate. He was bloody born ready. 400 pounds, mate. He was ready to go.
He's been scrapping.
So I see you doing a lot of other stuff. Again, credit to all the work that you've done. I saw you were doing some stuff with AJ.
Yes, yeah.
Not this AJ, but the other AJ.
Smaller AJ.
I mean, me and him need to talk about that because there can be only one, like 100%. The Highlander. But we'll hash it out when he comes on. Let's talk about that. Give us a little insight about how that was and how that came about and how. Yeah.
So I got an opportunity. Just someone was doing a little bit of work with Anthony and his team, and they reached out saying they were looking to sort of they wanted someone to do some work at the Dubai Expo, and they were saying that obviously Anthony's there and he's going to come and speak on behalf of himself and the boxing side of things, but they also wanted to start to bring a bit of the MMA sort of stuff into it as well. So if you're interested, come and sit down, meet up with Anthony, have a bit of a chat, and just you guys can bounce some ideas about how you want to do it. And they wanted to do like an hour at our VUUZLE pavilion at the Dubai Expo. And I said, at the end of the day, a chat can't hurt. We'll go in there and I'll have a bit of a sit down with him, and we'll go from there and see what we want to do. Never met him, never had anything to do with him. And then when I went and met him for the first time, he was just like one of the guys. You know what I mean? He was I was extremely taken back about his humble approach. He was within 10 minutes, and he got a bit of an insight into like what I do and how I do it. He was asking us for not advice, but like just thoughts on a couple of things that he was looking to incorporate into his training and his preparation for his next fight. And we got on really well. He's from a good team, and then we caught up a few times, and then we ended up doing the Dubai Expo. Had a bit of a chat on stage. We got some of the UAE boxing team, did a couple of little tips and tricks with them, and sat down, did a few Q&As from the guy that interviewed us, Chris, and then also took some questions from the crowd too. It was a extremely cool experience to sit up there with one of the guys that I think's up there with pound for pound, one of the greats. Like I think, like in all sports, when people are participating in the current moment in time, you sort of don't appreciate how good they really are until they're using a walking stick to get up on the stage.
And then you're like, then they're being compared to
then they're like,
would they have beat this guy? And they talk to the new ones. Do you think you could have beat AJ in his prime and stuff? Yeah.
So I've got nothing but respect for him. I think he was a gentleman and a really cool guy. And I stay in touch with other members of his team, and hopefully we're looking to link back up again in the near future as he prepares to get this next victory.
How frustrating is it being a coach, being somebody involved in depth when it comes to, because it's frustrating for me, and I'm just standing next to the coach who's involved. The politics within combat sports, within UFC, within boxing, when the fan fight usually never gets to happen because of politics, because of money, because of someone's just doesn't want to tarnish their relationship, their win streak or something like that. So they're like, no, they'll make an excuse and they'll not fight. Is that quite frustrating to you, where you'll be like, this fight could be A, the best for the fans, and B, this guy standing in the way of getting, like, for example, imagine the next fight for Bam, and then the other guy just like running away from the fight, risky, and it can kind of drop someone's career back so far, and a whole year or two, just because this guy's not agreeing to it, and there's really nothing you can do about it.
100%. Yeah, I'm lucky in the fact that once you crack the UFC, I think reason why people love it so much is that it usually is the best of the best competing against each other. Like when you make the UFC, there's very few easy fights. You know what I mean? People, I think, say for the heavyweight division, there is 37 or 38 heavyweights that are signed to the UFC out of the whole world of heavyweight MMA fighters. Wow. So just to crack the UFC is
enough,
you're up there with the top tier guys in the world, definitely. So there's not going to be too many easy fights. So in the UFC, although there is some managers that are going to be very strategic, and I obviously, even as a coach, I want to make sure that it's the best fight for my fighter. Usually you don't get too much of a choice. The UFC will ping you out a message and say, are you ready to fight? Yep. Okay, well, we've got this guy for you on this date, and you better have a pretty good reason to why you can't fight him if you can't take it. Boxing, a bit of a different story. Boxing, you've because you've got so many organizations and promotions and managers and things like this. They be a lot more strategic, in who they fight and where they fight them, because they put so much of an emphasis on boxing in having that undefeated, if you're still trying to work your way up through the ranks and look to compete for titles, if as soon as you have 1 or 2 losses, you're almost straight away thrown in the journeyman bracket or category. So that's why what a lot of them will do, they'll probably give you say 5 easy fights against the guy that my little sister could beat, and then what they'll do, they'll give you a bit of a test.
Why did you look at me when you said that? I don't appreciate that, Sully.
Definitely. No daggers been thrown. But
your little sister must be a beast. I'm a pretty good roller.
I'm coming in hot. So they give him they'll give him 5 or 6 tests, and then they'll give him 5 or 6 easy fights, then they'll give him a test. They beat the test, then it's like, okay, great. Now another 3 or 4 easy fights and another test, and that's why you see these boxing guys that are 21-0 and 25-0, but they've probably only had 3 proper tests.
Yeah, real fights. So controversial subject. Feel free to say you don't want to. No comment. I mean, I'm not going to edit it out, so you should answer. UFC fighter pay. Now, you got people. I know a couple of fighters. Example, do you know Brendan, who trains at the gym? Just signed for the signed for the PFL. Could have, declined the UFC. There are a lot of fighters out there that are not going to the UFC because they feel like they're not being looked after, and they're not, the UFC isn't looking out for them in the long run, where they could have 3 fights in the PFL and make as much money as they would in 20 fights in the UFC. What's your views about that?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I find that everyone's got their own unique sort of situation. Someone like Brendan, I've been lucky enough to work with him quite a fair bit. He knows that, he's at the stage of his career where he's probably got, 1 or 2 years left to get in there and try and make as much money and get as much exposure as possible. So he feels as if the PFL, $1 million tournament, that's where it's at. Whereas he goes signs to the UFC, he's probably, like you said, probably going to have to make $1 million, have to have 15 fights. I feel as if the UFC it's got himself to a point where they're almost giving the athlete a platform and an opportunity to prove himself as the best in the world.
Because their marketing is second to none.
Unbelievable, man. The production they do, the marketing, the exposure they give these fighters. So someone like Tai, for example, does he want to get paid more money? Of course. You know what I mean? I think he should get paid more money as well, but he doesn't sit there and kick rocks and say you guys should pay me more. What he does is he tries to use this platform the UFC have given him to be a bit of a household name, to do the Shaun Sullivan, to do the Drink West, to do his FTA apparel. So, that's what, and, Tai, for as young as he is, he actually says this to some of the fighters that, have been in the game a lot longer. He says, unfortunately, one, fighting isn't good enough. You can't just go in there and be a good fighter. We're in the entertainment business. You got to go in there, and it's the whole package, from the build up to the fight week to the weigh-ins to the post-fight interviews. You've got to entertain. Probably give yourself the best opportunity to sell yourself. And secondly, use this platform to try and branch out and try and tick as many boxes as possible. To give yourself the best opportunity to make money, because as any of these guys, we've been lucky enough that Tai and I have worked with some guys that are some of the veterans of the sport that competed in the UFC from the early days.
And now they're coaching people.
The time in the sun isn't long.
They're not.
You know what I mean? One moment you're sitting there, everyone knows your name. You're you're killing it. You think you're going to be a champion one day, and then fast forward 2 years later, like you said, you're a trainer at a gym.
And even for champions as well, it's like you got to remember, one detached retina, one fight could stop you from fighting.
Yeah.
And if you haven't prepped for that after.
Yeah, massively.
It's not easy.
Ty's one example I give a lot of people is Ty's brother-in-law, Tyson Pedro.
Tyson Pedro, yeah. He's been off 2 years now, is it? Or three?
Three years. So yeah, he's so he got he got signed to the UFC when I was working with him, and he had a fight against Khalil Roundtree in December. You know, he was still working full time in the army. He came and we'd had 3 fights that year. He won all 3. They said to him, "You fight." He goes in there, he submits the guy inside 3 minutes. He gets performance of the night bonus. So with the UFC, the way it works is you get a contract. Say, for example, you might get 20,000 for the fight to rock up and compete. Then if you win, that doubles.
Bonus, yeah.
So that you get 40,000. If you lose, obviously you only get the 20. And then Dana hands out 3 or 4 $50,000 US dollar bonuses. So Tyson fought, he won. And then he also got the bonus. So fighting on the regional circuit, you'd be lucky if you get $2,000 or $3,000, best case scenario. So then Tyson went in and beat this guy, walked away with $90,000 for 2 minutes work. Then
it's crazy, right?
They asked him, then he,
90,000
so
for 2 minutes.
We're buzzing, we're killing it.
I mean, it's not 2 minutes because there's a lot of training and a lot of timing, but still.
100%. But for the same amount
I'll take that to just stand there and get punched in the face.
Get dropped, yeah. But so that same amount of work that he was putting in for his fight before, he got $3,000 for. So, and then fast forward 3 months later, he got to compete again in Las Vegas against, Paul Craig. Went out there, similar sort of story. So that's the good side of fighting in the UFC. He fought twice in 3 months, made great money. He thought, we all thought, we're onto a good thing here. Life's good. We're looking at Louis Vuitton bags. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like happy days. And then you fast forward. I think it was 12 months later. He had a fight against Shogun, and he's doing really well in the fight. And then one knee in the wrong spot, and he blows out his ACL and a few other bits and pieces in his knee. Then so he's out for 12 months. Then coming back, the surgery, those complications, pushes him back another 10 months. Then he signs a fight. I'm finally back. Then he gets kicked in one wrong spot in sparring. So before you know it, he's now spent 3 years before he's earned any income whatsoever.
Yeah.
So
and spent that income because you thought more was coming.
100%, probably.
Quick.
And not just that, like, unfortunately, for guys that are competing in the UFC, I was lucky enough to do a bit of work with the Penrith Panthers, a professional rugby league team in Australia. And they have, you obviously, when you're playing at professional rugby league, you don't put your hand in your pocket for anything. You have nutritionists saying, eat this. You have supplements for here. You've got a masseuse here, a physiotherapist there, a doctor giving you everything is account. All your trainings obviously provide. Whereas these guys that are competing in the UFC, everything's from their pocket. They're paying for their own physio, masseuse, their trainers,
operations,
anything, any injuries, any little things. So yeah, you can burn through the money quite quickly when there's nothing coming in. So that's these fighters, like I said, when the sun's out, life's good, but you've also got to be prepared for those rainy days.
Yeah, I think it's we should mention a couple of. You've worked with a lot of high-level fighters around the world. I've seen a lot of them that have come in. Give me a bit of insight. How when it comes to working with all these big names and stuff.
Yeah. So the way I sort of do it for myself is, I use the analogy that the fighter is the house. So they'll come into the gym, or they'll reach out to me and they'll speak out and they'll sort of say, like, I'm looking to come do some training, or I've got a fight coming up on this day. So I say that they're the house, and then I just see myself as the builder that's got to put this house together and give this fighter the best opportunity to have success when they're competing. So I feel as if I have a pretty good understanding and knowledge of all aspects of the game, whether it be the grappling or the striking, from myself training when I was looking to compete, and then also looking now just purely from a coaching point of view, being lucky enough to work with some really high level coaches, both in Australia, but also traveling overseas to some of the well-known camps around the world. So what I do, instead of trying to be a jack of all trades, master of none, I'll try and look to bring in guys. So I'll bring in the plumber, the electrician. So instead of trying to build this whole house myself, I'll be looking to bring in a really good jiu-jitsu grappling specialist, a really good wrestling coach, some high-level kickboxing, some high-level, and then I bring it together and I say, like, okay, you need to really work with this guy because this is an area of weakness, or this is one of your strengths. So I want you to really try and take this to the next level. Little things like that. And it's almost like, it's trying to bring that high performance coaching aspect, to MMA, into these guys that are looking to compete. And, that's one thing that I really spent a lot of time trying to put together some of, my own personal thoughts and beliefs behind it, because, when I was, again, going back to like working with some of the rugby league guys, I just felt as if they were looking to, when they were playing professional sport, it was very high standard. They had defensive coaches, they had strength and conditioning coaches, they had, guys that, psychologists, they had nutrition, everything. They will
shave your beard at this angle because when you're on the floor, it slides better when it's 100%,
going up the grade. Yeah, definitely. That was it.
Details.
And then I'd go from there to our fight gym, and you'd be punching just the bag, and the coach would be like, what'd you eat for dinner last night? Oh, pizza.
Like, cool.
Eat that again. You're punching hard
today.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It was like
that old school. Yeah.
I tried to bring in, a bit of these, philosophy that I took from working with these guys and from the professional rugby league environment, and bring this into, my coaching, working with the, some of these MMA guys. So, and it's worked really well. I'm lucky enough to, like you said, find myself working with guys from all around the world, from all different, backgrounds and experiences. And, we're having some really good success by just, sort of putting it together and making sure we're ticking all the boxes and putting a plan in place that's, they're going to give the fighter the best chance of doing really well.
Yeah, man. And I think that's something that you should be commended for as well, because, I was in the fitness industry for so long. It's the fact that you can drop your ego for what's best for the fighter, because it's a very selfish industry.
100%.
People don't like to give money they could be getting to someone else.
Definitely.
So that's actually, again, commended on that you can put the fighter before yourself, because you could be like, right, it's going to cost this much, I'm going to do all.
Definitely. And that's exactly what happens. A fighter will come to me, and usually they'll have an allocated percentage of their purse that they will want to put aside to myself to oversee the training. Or they'll say, if they're lucky enough, they'll have a sponsor that'll say, I'll give you X amount of dollars, put the camp together. And like you said, if you wanted to,
just keep it all.
I'll just
like,
I can hold.
I've rolled.
I can hold the pads. I can wrestle. I can do it. I'll tick all the boxes. But really, the way I see it is, I'm a big believer. Through some of the studies that I read, is that a lot of majority of the time people have ulterior motives in everything they do. Whether it be good or bad, there's usually an ulterior motive behind doing something. So I know that when I work with an athlete, I have an ulterior motive. I want to look really good. I want to look like this unbelievable high-level, world-class coach. So the best way I do that is getting this athlete to ensure that they perform to the best of their capability at the highest level. Whereas if I, for example, like you said, if I was a, jiu-jitsu coach, then again, my ulterior motive is to look really good. So I'm going to push as hard as I can to try and get this athlete, fighter, to go out there and win by jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And sometimes that might be the best option or the best path to victory for him, but I've got this ulterior motive that I want to really look good. I want to stand there like I showed him how to do that
Not
submission.
realizing that it makes you better by doing it the way you do it, because, again, it's all about the trusting. Word spreads. This is a very, as big as it seems, it's a very small community.
100%, yeah.
So when people start to see from the outside that, hold on a minute, this guy's doing this and he's not in it, then the trust will be there for more fighters to come and go, I can trust that he's in this for my best interest,
Yeah.
Let's talk about Thailand. Because Tai was telling a story that I think everybody needs to everybody needs to hear about that. I think that was the original script of The Hangover came from that. Yeah. From that trip.
Yeah, no. So I think I'm trying to remember the exact age, but I'm pretty sure Tai was, I think, 17 years old. So I was going over to Thailand. There was myself and another UFC fighter, James Tahuna, and our other friend Erhan that went over. And it was actually the three of us were going over. Tai wasn't originally coming, but I reached out to him and sort of said like he was having a fight in this. It was called Combat 8, and it was just a boxing fight with MMA gloves. And when we were growing up, especially, we didn't have money to be traveling overseas and that sort of stuff. But I knew Tai was fighting on this card, so I said, listen, they're going to throw a few $1,000s at you. When you win. Do you want to come overseas to Thailand with us? We're going to train. There's this strip called the Shoey, Tiger Muay Thai, and it's got this and that, and it'd be an unbelievable experience for you. And he's like, yeah, I'll do that. He's like, So I ended up buying the tickets, telling him he's with us. With the four of us booked it, and I just when he won his fight, I took it back then and we went. And yeah, like as Tai tells the story, so we landed in Thailand. We landed there roughly around 8 o'clock at night. and there was the 4 of us, and we said, okay, we'll just quickly get something to eat, and then we're going to go to bed. We've got training in the morning. Then we'll show you like how it works. I think we had, wrestling in the morning. And as we went there, myself and, Jamie pulled up, and we got something to eat. And then Ty and my other friend, Erhan, sort of like, they were like whispering to each other. And then finally they said, listen, we don't like the food here. We're just going to go for a walk down the road.
Yeah, of course you are.
Yeah, and get something a bit nicer to eat. We want to just have a bit of a look. I said, I'm just eat here, it'll be fine. And and then they walked off. They walked around the corner, and then I think, they ended up finding a car and then get going into the city, down into Bangla Road. Yeah. And so me and Jamie finished eating, and then I went in and got something to eat. Went back to bed after we had something to eat. And then I woke up at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and neither of them are home. Ty and my other mate aren't home, and so that's when the anxiety. This is Ty's first ever time overseas. Everyone's his dad and his mum and his brothers have said, like, just make sure you listen to Sully, and Sully, you make sure you look after him. If he don't let him go anywhere without you and all that. And I'm just having these visions and these thoughts of like having to call his mum and be like,
he didn't make it back.
I can't find him. Like, like Thailand has him now. So, and then, I'm sitting there stressing, getting, anxious and then at about 8:30 in the morning, Ty walks in and he's got our other friend, like literally over his shoulder, passed out. A police officer dropped Ty and our other friend off at the front of the hotel. And I was just like, I was livid. You know what I mean? This has been, back when I could, like I said before, I was trying to tell him what to do and, how to do it. And I was like, what, where the hell have you been? What the hell did you go? This, that. And he just like blind, just going, bro, I've had the biggest night ever. You would not believe this, that. And I could have killed him, luckily for him, I couldn't. So, so that ended up going in, passing out cold. Fast forward 2 or 3 nights later, we ended up on the weekend tracking out the 4 of us to go check out Bangla Road and, have a little look around. And no word of a lie, every second lady at the club and the bar that worked there were yelling out, hey, Bam Bam, Bam Bam, you good man. And he's like, I was just like, how many bars did you go to in the space of like these 5 hours?
Surprised that he didn't. I'm sure he could do the whole strip.
Yeah, no, he was on first name basis with every bar owner on Bangla Road. So he definitely made his presence felt. And he fell in love with Thailand from there. I think he's been back like 10 times since. And lucky enough now, he does a little bit more training there, and he only goes to Bangla Road on the weekend.
A little bit more training.
Just to check in on his old friends.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. I'm not surprised at all. Shout out to the Middle East and Abu Dhabi for what they're doing, because they're slowly turning it into the mecca of UFC and fighting. I mean, obviously it's always going to have its American roots and stuff, but what they did during the pandemic, no one was doing.
100%.
You know what I mean? You reckon we're going to see an Emirati fighter or champion?
Yeah, well, I definitely think it's inevitable one day.
Is Muhammad Yahya there now?
Yep, he's not in the UFC, but he's just won the Arabia UAE lightweight title. But he's doing extremely well. He's doing the right stuff. I think he's on a 3-fight win streak at the moment. Been lucky enough to corner Yahya a couple of times. He's one of those guys that is just too hot-headed, hot-blooded, just loves to fight too much. Like, the path to victory would be so easy if he went this way, but just loves to scrap and loves to fight. But I think, in this region, we're extremely lucky that, we're starting to put it together as far as like the MMA side of combat sports, because, for so long, we had this unbelievable influence of, wrestling from Iran and also Kazakhstan, Dagestan, those sort of guys, coming in and having that unbelievable grappling aspect. And then, you combine that with the Sheikh of Abu Dhabi has put an extremely strong emphasis on jiu-jitsu. So every student that goes to school within the UAE,
military, all of that
they're
stuff,
now doing the jiu-jitsu program. And then you can't combine that with, that Dutch, Moroccan, kickboxing influence. So, the writing on the wall was there. It was just putting it together. So we're lucky now that they've started to put a bit of time and effort. There's a few people that are involved at a higher level that, really want to see MMA do well within this region, and they're putting the time, effort and resources into it. And so now some of these gifted and talented students, they're now the next wave. And the more we have these guys that, we're extremely fortunate to have some of these guys that, like Ty and some of the others that are, are coming from around the world that already do compete on the world stage to come here and show these, future generations, not only that it's achievable, but, it's very black and white what you need to do to get there, then it's going to be, massive for this region. And I think, my goal is for, definitely to have like an Emirati compete, in the UFC in the near future. And I think, we're putting the right things in place to achieve this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you've also got Khabib, who's a big fan of the Emirates and is always here, and it's always good to have those kind of names around. Their facilities in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
Like you look at NAS.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah,
unbelievable, right?
Yeah, and that just goes to show that the people at the top are willing to put the money and the resources in to this space, to making sure that these people that want to try and follow the path to compete, and it doesn't just have to be in UFC, whether it be in boxing or kickboxing or jiu-jitsu or wrestling, these combat sport areas, there's a clear pathway for them to achieve that.
I mean, you got jiu-jitsu arena. I mean, it's crazy, 50 years and the stuff that they got here. Some places that have had jiu-jitsu for years and years and years and years don't have a specific stadium made for them. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it's incredible, and what they're doing is crazy, and the way they treat the fighters and Dana and whoever comes in, these big brands, when they come in, they're looked after.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't they want to come and do another event here? Because it's very successful for the people. I mean, Dubai is not a bad holiday to have to go and watch a fight.
I think that's where we were very lucky in the fact that over the last 2 years, we were one of probably the few places that benefited from a training point of view, through the pandemic, because I was talking to friends in Australia and America and Europe that were having to try and partner up with one or two friends and train in their garage but keep it quiet so the neighbors didn't hear, because they'd call the police and that. And then I was sending in videos of 30 guys training on the mats from all around the world. So we were very lucky in the way that they the leaders of the UAE handled the pandemic. It allowed us to get back into training pretty much straight away. So I think, like I said, I think in the roughly around September, October, they're looking to come back and do another show in Abu Dhabi. I know they've signed a bit of an agreement to make sure they come here X amount of times over the next 3 years. But it's really good to when they do come to Abu Dhabi, because it obviously creates a little bit more awareness and exposure to the sport, and it gets more eyes, which is what we want for not just the fighters that are already there, but those fighters that are have that enthusiasm to want to try and get there themselves.
What fights are you looking forward to seeing now, and who do you really have your eye on? Obviously, other than me and Tai, as the best fighters in the world right now, who do you see that is?
Yeah, obviously this weekend there's a pay-per-view on. There's Colby Covington and Masvidal, so that'd be interesting.
There's a bit of heat there.
Yeah, because I'm a big believer. Like, people have been asking about me, like, who do you think? I'm a big believer that I truly believe that one of them already know who's got the upper hand.
Yeah.
Who
do you think it is?
Yeah, well, you'd have to think it would be Colby, just given off their track record. Like, a bit of a Masvidal fan, but if I had to just purely think of the stylistic matchup, I think Colby's got a bit of a resume at the moment. I think Masvidal has an unbelievable run these last 2 years, but I think if you look at the way they both matched up, they've both fought Kamaru Usman twice. I think I'd be leaning to give the advantage to Colby. But when you train with someone, like, there's guys that I've trained with for long periods of time, like, who's that little bit of a step above, what I mean? Like, so it'll take something special, like, for example, like Tyson. Me and Tyson trained together for, a long time, even when I was still looking to compete, and he was competing, we were training together for a fight and that sort of stuff. You knew that Tyson was, a few levels above where I was at, as a person looking to fight. So if I was going to fight against Tyson back then, I would know that I would need something special to pull out a bit of a Hail Mary.
Elbow from hell.
Yeah, exactly. I need a Hail Mary if I was to beat him in a fight. And I think Masvidal and Colby, it's the same thing. I think one of them knows that one of them's got the upper hand, and he's the better martial artist and fighter. So they're going to think they need something special to get the win. And then, as far as like fighters at the moment who I think I've got that little bit of X factor about it. Obviously, it'd be hard to go past that Hazmat Shamaev. I've been watching a little bit of like what Darren Till's gone over and did a bit of training, and we've got a couple of mutual friends that have trained over at that All Stars gym in Sweden, and literally everyone says the same thing. Usually, when you get people talk about the training rooms, you'll have someone that'll try and shut someone down. That's very because for example, if Tai's looking to compete in a fight in 10 weeks, there's so many guys that come through and will use as sparring partners, as trainers, or that'll share the mats with him. That'll be their day to get their win. If they can get it over Tai in sparring, I smashed him. That was my win. Whereas Tai doesn't give a shit about today. He cares about 10 weeks time.
And not knowing that, you were the 9th person he sparred that
exactly.
day.
I understand he was flat. He couldn't give a shit. But it's the same thing in all gyms. There'll be moments where people will come in and try and get there. So usually, no matter how good someone is, you'll hear a story like, my friend AJ smashed him, at the mats the other day, like took him down 12 times. Whereas this Hamzat Jamaev,
no one's saying
at the moment, he's pretty hot to trot. Like everyone's talking him up, everyone's saying that he trains 5 times a day. So he's getting a little bit of this aura about him at the moment. So let's see how much of it is true, and we won't know until he gets to finally compete against some of these guys at the very, very top tier. So he's definitely someone to keep an eye on.
What about Izzy? I love Izzy.
Yeah, he's killing it at the moment.
Not just fighting styles, I would say, because he doesn't have a style. I don't think. I think he's got about 10.
A style bender.
Yeah. I like his views on things. I like the way he carries himself. I like a lot of stuff. I don't know if you can like him because he's from New Zealand, so I don't know if you're allowed to.
No, definitely. We're one of the New Zealand's like our cousin, so it's like we love each other, but we we punch on heaps in the backyard together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Israel's. I haven't got anything but nice things to say about him. We were lucky enough to fight on the same card in Houston, and we've got a lot of mutual friends that train at City Kickboxing, and they've achieved some unbelievable success. And we're lucky to have Dan Hooker to come over and spend. We've known him for a long time, to when he first signed with the UFC, but he came over and did some training with us last year during the pandemic. He got stuck here for about 2 or 3 months, and he's an absolute legend and a gentleman. You don't find anyone nicer than Dan. But that gym itself, they've created a really good culture within the gym where they're nothing but respectful, and it's easy to do that when you're a small little gym that's sort of going along and ticking the boxes and doing well. But when they started having some big success on the world stage, and people were really saying that this is the premier gym, and even the coaches, Eugene and Doug and the others, they were saying that these are some of the best coaches in the world at the moment. They didn't change, and we recently just caught up with a few of them in Houston, and we hadn't seen in probably about 12 to 18 months, and still humble guys going around, giving everyone the time of day, showing respect, and Israel is definitely like leading from the forefront of doing that. Obviously, it was one of those tricky situations where we're close with Rob. He's Australian. We trained.
What did you think about that fight?
Yeah, well,
I don't want to interrupt, but Rob thought that he won.
Yeah.
Did you believe that he was right in that, or nah? Is it hard to kind of convince someone as a trainer? What do you do in that situation when they think they won and you're like?
Yeah, it depends on every situation's unique, and I've been in situations where I coached Arlene Blenko that fought for the Bellator title against Julia Budd, and it still annoys me to this day, that everyone in that arena was saying that she won that fight. I've watched the fight 5 times. 100% I'll challenge anyone to show me how she didn't win the fight, and we got a split decision loss, and that was for the world title, and that was an extremely tough pill to take. But in the moment, it's so hard to sort of gather your thoughts and emotions. I think Israel even said, like, sometimes you got to have a shower afterwards and then start to really sit back and watch it. But obviously Tai fought the fight before that, so we were backstage, we were buzzing, and we could only watch bits and pieces and see it did look like it was a really close fight. And I still haven't had a chance to sit back and watch the whole 25 minutes. I've only seen highlights and that sort of stuff. I think Israel had his moments that, he did really well. I think Rob showed a lot of resilience to come back and finish the fight strong. But I think those two have definitely set themselves as the standard, in that, middleweight division. I think, I don't see anyone beating either of them. It's just, at the moment Israel's got the 2-0 advantage over Rob, but
like a trilogy fight should be coming.
Maybe down the track. I think Rob will look what he did. When he lost the first fight, not too many people would be able to, like he did. Go away, put in the work, go on that run. Take out the top tier guys in that division, and then go in there. And then the fight was obviously, like I said, a really close fight, and he didn't get the victory, but I'm sure he's, Rob's, I think he's 30 years old. He's been around for so long, but he's still relatively young.
Yeah, he's ready to scrap, man.
Yeah,
he's still good to go.
When you fight Rob, you're in for a hard fight.
Yeah. I saw the other day, it was in boxing, but somebody was saying that there should be some kind of system other than guys sitting there taking scores, some kind of VAR system or some kind of way of judging the fight other than people. Do you believe that could be a good thing? Or because there are so many decisions in every combat sport where there are a lot of people going, what the hell happened here? Yeah,
for sure. And it's one of the, especially in a sport like the UFC where you get paid double if you win and only half if you lose. It's like
and mental as well, because
and it can change someone's career.
Yeah, somebody can not bounce back as well as they would because they didn't handle it well, or they didn't take it. Yeah.
I don't have the answer. I know people have said 3 is not really enough. They said that it should definitely be increased, to more. Like maybe if we had 5, because when you've got 3 people, it literally only takes one person to, really not be seeing something right, and then you've got everything riding on these 2 guys making sure they've got the right decision. So maybe 5. I don't know. Maybe like
8. They should put 2 on each side,
maybe
and
8
then
or
just
something like that.
Anything that's close, throw them together, and then.
I think there's definitely it's something that they should be looking at. I don't know whether or not they go to the polls. I like what they did in PFL. They used to show the people at home they could vote and show, and sometimes you get a very clear idea. Like if they show that 85-90% of people thought that this person won the fight, then they're probably right.
But also at the same time, that's how do you monitor that? Because A, you can just get haters.
Oh, for
B,
sure.
you can get people who called in a million times.
Definitely,
you can get, and then you've got maybe 30% of the people who watch the fight but can't be asked to actually get involved in it that as well.
And emotions start to play a part. And because one thing I think the UFC do really well is they sell the people, the personalities that are fighting, especially on like big cards and pay-per-views. So like people, I think Dana White said when he was trying to sell the UFC to a couple of investors in the early days, he said, you could have a football match going on over there, a tennis match here, and a rugby match here, and 2 guys start fighting over here.
Yeah,
I guarantee you everyone's going to watch. And so it's human nature to watch 2 guys competing in unarmed combat. Yeah. But then I tell you one thing: if you know one of those people that are fighting in there, you're all in. Your eyes are glued to it. And the UFC do a good job of telling the story about the fighter, who they are, and their background, and what they fight for, to get people's vested interest into it.
Mate, I feel like we're going to go back to the gladiator days, because you had boxing, pretty padded gloves. Yeah. Then you got UFC, less padded gloves, and more, anything goes. Then you've got bare knuckle, which is raw. Dude, people are coming out of that look like they had a car crash. Yeah. Like faces just busted open and everything. I think eventually people are going to want that raw. 2 guys with a sword, and let's see. Like, I think that fight to the death thing is not going to be, some secret tournament in Thailand somewhere where you have to pay to get in.
Well, that's what I said to people about that fight Island. If you took a step back and looked at it, you had Dana and these, bored, billionaires that were flying people in from all around the world to come fight in a cage in their underwear. Yeah, right. On this island.
Like a little Bruce Lee movie, right?
That's what I said. I'm like, it's something out of a movie. You know what I mean? We all just sort of like accepted it and just sort of went like, oh, this would be cool. And, I cornered, a couple of the guys that fought on Fight Island, and like, when they got in there and the guys were flying in, and some guys were on jets, some guys were on charters, and then they put us in quarantine.
Connor in a boat.
Yeah, Connor pulled up on his boat, and then there was like a quarantine period as well. You weren't allowed to leave the hotel room for 48 hours, and then you had to stay in that island part, like, and then go in there. They set up this little cage inside a little makeshift, small little arena, and
it's crazy.
Definitely something out of
sushi, watching it and stuff.
100%. It was something out of a movie.
Yeah, that's kind of like, because when I was talking to Hoyce as well on the podcast, you kind of forget UFC 1 was like that. More so because it was different styles.
Definitely.
There
Well, that's
was
how it started.
jiu-jitsu, there
Yeah.
was a boxer, there was
Yeah.
a kickboxer,
Karate,
there was a sumo guy,
wrestler,
there was
yeah.
a karate guy, and that was something out of a movie. Literally,
Big
it
time,
was.
yeah.
There's been movies like that.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, you just needed a little James Bond character and a little
Come in
evil
there.
guy with a cat, just like
Stroking it,
setting
yeah.
it all out. You know.
Yeah, I love watching some of that
crazy,
stuff
yeah,
about
yeah.
how it when it originated.
And
like
the
you said,
fights, no refs,
No,
and there was no times.
no time limit.
You fight until someone's tired and they can't.
Yeah, I
Can't
forget the
go.
name of the guy, but there was one guy that the big black guy that was his background was sumo, and he
He
had
had
the
his
first fight.
Taken out.
And they
yeah.
said that backstage there was at the very first one. I think they said there was roughly 30 guys because they just put flyers out
Yeah,
to all the
yeah.
gyms and said if
Yeah.
you think you're the best, fighter / unarmed combat guy, then come down. We're going to do it, and there'll be a prize for the winner.
Yeah, yeah.
So all these guys come in, like you said, the karate instructor
Yeah.
will jump down, the kickboxer, the wrestler, the judo, and they said that they got a couple of people talking about it, and they said everyone was watching this sumo guy
Yeah.
because he was something like
Yeah.
200 kilos, 400 pounds, something like that, and he's sitting there just like this huge guy, and he was the actual first fight of the night,
Yeah.
and everyone was sort of watching and that sort of stuff, and then like you said, he ended up getting dropped with a punch, and then the guy kicked
Kicked
him,
his teeth out the Dutch
and-
kickboxer.
yeah, and he kicked him, and his 3 teeth just flew out, across the cage,
Yeah.
and then everyone was backstage, and then this huge monster of a man came backstage, blood pouring out of his mouth, his 3 teeth in his hand, and they said out of the 30 guys, like straight off the bat, 15 to 16 of them just left. Said, this isn't for me. You know what I mean? I didn't know it was going to be like this, So if this is going to be happen to someone this size, then, and then, obviously, sure enough, jiu-jitsu prevailed,
Yeah,
and, the story started, from there.
That's crazy. Dude, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
appreciate it,
Did you
man.
feel like there's anything that we missed out on? What time is it in Australia now?
It's 8-hour difference. So usually it's,
Let's see where Bam is, if he's awake.
no, he'll definitely be sleeping now.
Will he be
hopefully.
sleeping or will he be partying?
Nah,
Dude?
not
That's
yet.
the question.
One more night because he's catching up with his family down in
Yeah,
Melbourne this weekend.
Yeah,
so he's
yeah.
excited about that. He's going to take his son down there. If it was tomorrow night on a Friday
Would've
night,
been on, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
He definitely we could FaceTime in and
Yeah,
be
got him on the big
the
screen and
guys
do that
would
there.
be in the probably kicking on in the garage somewhere singing
Yeah.
songs. But tonight, hopefully, he's getting a little bit
that's
of
what you
well-needed
think.
beauty
That's
sleep.
what you think. Man.
Hopefully,
you're
that's
not,
what he's
you're
telling
not
me.
there. That's what you
Yeah,
think, man.
that's what he's telling me.
Yeah,
Anyways.
well, look, I can't wait for the next episode that we do together, me, you, and him.
I appreciate
And
it.
we
Yeah,
put his
cool.
one next to that one.
It's not far away, man.
It's not far away, man. How does that feel knowing that it's not far away,
No,
dude?
it's good. It's within reach, and like I said, it's nothing
it
better
is.
than
Yeah.
if you can get a combination of that intrinsic and extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. You know what I mean? Ty's
Yeah.
already, internally motivated quite heavily for him. He loves to fight, but he also wants to test himself against the best guys
Yeah.
in the world because, it's almost like old school.
Yeah,
He's
what's
like,
the point
I
if I'm not
feel,
gonna fight? Yeah.
I feel I can beat you,
Yeah.
and you feel you can beat me. So there's one way to find out, and that's
Yeah.
what he was saying about Derrick, and that's what he'll say about
Yeah.
the next one too. I'm sure there'll be people in his next fight that'll say, I don't
Nah.
think Ty will beat
Yeah.
him, but Ty, and us,
Yeah.
we believe that he will, and then it'll be, let's go out there and see
Yeah,
who's
then
right and who's wrong.
He'll come out to Candle in the Wind from Elton John.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
he'll win the fight.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way it
It'll
is.
be some
Yeah,
bubbly
exactly.
stuff for sure.
Dude, it's been an absolute pleasure.
I appreciate
and
having
thank you
a
so
chat,
much
man.
for coming down and giving us your insight on everything. And we can't wait till the next one.
Look forward to it.
Guys, don't forget to like and subscribe and press on all the bells. I've been AJ, he's been Sully, and we'll see you next time. Boom.